Let's get focused in Europe, just before the Great War started.
The countries have always fought to be the most powerful and the richest of all. Before the war started, some countries created alliances between each other. For example, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy were called the Triple Alliance. In the alliances, the governments were willing to protect their allies' power. They all wanted to have the greatest army, and Russia had to have the largest at the time. It is important to mention that Austria-Hungary was a large empire with many ethnic groups among it that had been conquered over the history. Britain had been the most powerful country, but this position was being threatened by Germany. We also have to consider that in Europe, the socialist ideas were causing trouble, and many countries decided to join the war in order to distract people from this ideology. So whatever it was distracting people or just to prove that what country was best, everyone had a reason to fight. They just needed an excuse for starting it. Unfortunately, that excuse came in June 28 of 1914, when in Sarajevo, Bosnia, Gavrilo Princip, a member of the Black Hand, a Serbian terrorist group, assassinated the Austro-Hungary Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, who was the successor to the throne of Austro-Hungary. This was an act of rebellion from Bosnia's side that they wanted to be independent from Austro-Hungary. This is how the Great War started. But how does the assassination of the Archduke become the spark that triggered this war? After the assassination, Austria declared war to Serbia. Disposed to stop the nationalist movement in Serbia, they believing Russia wouldn't get involucrated. When Austria-Hungary declared war, Russia supported Serbia and started the mobilization of its army. Immediately, the alliances systems started working. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy were the Triple Alliance, as we mentioned before, and England, Russia, and France were the Triple Entente. With Russia's army in Austria, Germany warned Russia to stop the army mobilization. If it didn't, Germany would join the war. Russia, ignoring Germany, continued the mobilization. Later, Germany attempted to attack France and violated Belgium's neutrality by passing over their territory, and England, in response to this, got involved in the war. And so on more countries got involved. The alliances did not stay as they began during the course of the whole war. Italy attacked Austria-Hungary and changed sides to the Triple Entente, renamed the Triple Allied Powers. Russia left the war in 1918, but the US has joined them in 1970. The Triple Alliance was joined by Bulgaria and by the Ottoman Empire during the war. The governments made use of a lot of propaganda to manipulate public opinion to support or go against something so people will approve of the decision the government made. The soldiers used to live in trenches and the Western Front. Soldiers had dug these holes in the ground protected by barbed wire entanglements. They lived in these holes to protect themselves. These long holes were digged in front of enemy's trench with a space called no man land in the middle. The trenches were fatal if a bomb landed because they were trapped, diseases spread easily, and the soldiers lived covered in mud. Also, by the end of 1915, airplanes appeared for the first time in the battle. First, they were used to locate the enemy's position, and then they began attacking the ground. The war was also fought in disguise, as the pilots would fight for airspace control. For these reasons, machine guns were mounted on the front of the planes. Germany used the Zeppelins to bomb England. Soon, they found out they burned easily because they were filled with hydrogen gas. Germans and British used the submarines to fight each other during a war. A German submarine sank the Lusitania, giving the US an excuse to join the war. The poison gas was used first by the French in the war, but the Germans developed it and gave more use to it. This weapon is banned now as it kills massive amounts of people with minimal effort. What happened to women during the war? The World War created new roles for women since most of the men were out fighting. Women took jobs they were previously not allowed to, but when it ended, they were quickly fired. However, the Great War had a positive impact in the development of women's rights. In Germany, Austria, Great Britain, and the United States, women were given right to vote shortly after the war. Many people thought this war wouldn't last long. No one imagined this war would become the greatest conflict in the world had seen up until then. The Great War ended up in 1918 with the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in 1919. It was led by the Big Three: George Clemenceau, Premier of France, David Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Great Britain, and Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States. Wilson was eager to create the League of Nations to keep peace, although when it was created he did not join. Clemenceau was called the Wolf. For his extreme points of view, he wanted Germany to be so wounded it would never be able to rise again, and his views were supported by the French people. Germany accepted the treaty. It had no other choice. This treaty was unsuitable for the Germans, and it made them so angry that it would cause another world war. The treaty established Germany was responsible for starting the war. Germany had to pay 33 billion US dollars for all the damages the Allies had after war. Germany had to reduce its army to 100,000 men, cut its navy, and eliminate the air force. Alsace and Lorraine had to be returned to France. Sections of the Eastern Germany were given to the new Polish state, and the League of Nations took control of German colonies. Germany was prohibited to unite Austria. The Treaty of Versailles redrew the map of Europe, and new nations such as Finland, Latvia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, and Hungary were created from the land of the Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. The Ottoman Empire was dissolved under France controlled Syria, while Britain had Palestine and Iraq. The treaty left Germany poor, triggering German hate and seeding future conflicts. The war destabilized the order of the world. One of the consequences of this destabilization was the Great War. It began in 1929, after the crash of the stock market in October. This is called the Black Tuesday. A cause was the overproduction of goods during the war. Industries and farms had been pushed by the governments to produce more to be able to sustain the war. When the war ended, the overproduction caused the prices to fall. Industries had lost money in the stock market crash, and with the low prices of products, it left a bigger loss of money for industries, so they had to fire people because they were no longer able to pay them. Another cause of the Great Depression was the weak bank structure that gave loans to everyone and had their unsuitable policies. Governments had no idea how to deal with this kind of situation. They raised the tariffs in attempt to protect their own national industries and making the situation even worse. During the Great Depression, people lived in Hoovervilles. These were a group of houses in the outskirts of town made of a cardboard, newspaper, and other materials they found. Like there was deflation. This means the lower of the prices and the quantity of money circulation. When the President Roosevelt was elected, he implemented the New Deal to end the Depression. The crash of the economy led many countries to losing its faith in the democratic model, favoring the rise of strong, charismatic political leaders that offered a way of the Depression with the return of dictatorial powers. A totalitarian state is that which controls the economy, political, cultural, social, and intellectual lives of the citizens. It is controlled by an autocratic authority. Few characteristics are control of the media, control of education, a secret police, charismatic leader, shattered family structure, feeling of being superior culture, relies on force, seeks to control the citizens' feelings and thoughts. Throughout history, many countries such as Germany, Japan, and Russia, while being the USSR, had a totalitarian regime. This government is still in the 21st century, but some try to hide it under a democratic mask. Some examples of totalitarian government or a government with tints of this sort are China, Cuba, North Korea, United States, and Saudi Arabia. Totalitarianism has also been portrayed in literature with works such as 1984 by George Orwell, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and more recently The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. An example of the totalitarian regimes was the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party was founded in 1919 and was known as the German Workers' Party, but it was renamed National Socialist German Workers' Party in 1921 when Adolf Hitler became the leader. Adolf Hitler was born in April 20 of 1889 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His father was a customs officer and his mother came from a poor peasant family. During his childhood, his family moved to Linz. When he entered middle school, he started failing his classes and he had to repeat years and decided to drop out of school in 1905. His father had died 2 years prior to his dropout. In 1907, he traveled to Vienna and applied to arts and architecture schools. He was rejected in both and returned to Linz. The winter, his mother died, leaving him orphaned, and he moved to Vienna. In 1913, he moved to Munich, and when the war broke out, he asked to join the German army, even though he was foreigner. When the war ended, he was still in recovery from a poison gas attack his regiment had suffered and was a torch when he learned the points to the Treaty of Versailles. He joined the Nazi Party in 1919 and later became the leader. He led a revolt in 1923, but it failed and was prison. During this time, he wrote My Struggle. When he was released, he recognized the party and came second in the elections of 1930. Later, he was made chancellor and was made the official leader in 1933. He ignored the Treaty of Versailles and started invading nearby countries and made the army big and strong. He committed suicide on April 30 of 1945 when he realized he had lost the Second World War. The Nazi ideology links nationalism, strong anti-Semitism and anti-communism together by a social Darwin theory of struggle. This theory gives the right to superior nations to invade others. They promoted hard work and slogans such as "Work means bread" and "Work sets you free." This was used in concentration camps and death camps such as Auschwitz. The black and red colors in the Nazi flag means the defense of blood and soil. They supported the idea of expanding to have more living space for Germans. The name Hitler, the Führer, this means the leader with complete power. They eliminated any political opponents and they wanted to develop an Aryan racial state ruling over Europe. They blamed Jews, Gypsies, disabled, black, gay, political opponents, and people with other ideologies for the German problems and imposed the ultimate solution. This was killing in death camps by forced labor these groups of people. This regime was the Schutzstaffel. They were originally created to be Hitler's bodyguards that controlled the common police and the Gestapo. In the economics, Hitler created public projects and imposed private constructions firms to create jobs and end the depression. The environment was the key to solve the unemployment. Ending the depression pushed the Germans to accept Hitler and the Nazis. They wanted to be economically self-sufficient, therefore they needed more land for farms and people working on them all the time, causing them to invade countries for the land and send groups they thought were inferior to work on them until they died. This regime violated almost every right in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 9. Protection from arbitrary arrest. The police could arrest you without any reason, and this was seen as keeping people safe. Article 6. Right of recognition as a person before the law. The Jews, Gypsies, disabled, gay, black, or political opinion were ripped from their rights and treated or were starved to death, forced to work, and experimented on like lab rats. Article 18. Freedom, the religion and belief. Youths and Jehovah's Witnesses were seen as an inferior race and their religious spaces were burned. Article to participate in the cultural life of a community. Jews were not allowed to attend to public spaces or participate in politics or cultural activities. Article 3. Right to live. 1 million people were murdered during the Holocaust. Article 19. Right of opinion and information. Anyone criticizing the government or even doubting of its ideals were murdered or sent to the concentration camps to work until they died.
Created using Powtoon.